Hey guys, how's everybody doing out there? Welcome to a long overdue review. That rhymed, yeah. Welcome back to a long overdue review of another movie of 2025 that I have seen, and that is the Thunderbolts. The first, I believe, Marvel movie of 2025. I saw this movie a couple of weeks ago. And I kept telling people, because there were a couple of you that were DMing me on my various social medias, like, did you see Thunderbolts? What did you think about it? I said, yeah, I'm going to put up my review. Now, guys, what you need to expect from me in terms of movie reviews is, don't expect me to put up a movie review right after I've seen it. I let it now digest for a while till I really get a real deep feeling of what I liked about the movie, and we're definitely going to talk about this. So in hindsight, the question that most of you guys are probably asking yourself is, did your boy like the movie? Yes, I did. I thought it was a very deep dive movie that touched on a lot of issues that a lot of us face, from deep depression to this to that, loss, losing someone who was very important to you. I felt very somewhat connected to this movie in a lot of ways because of a lot of the experiences that the characters went through. I have gone through in my personal life as well, where I'm feeling lost. I'm feeling, am I living up to this person's expectations? And, you know, how am I moving on from losing someone special in my life? And I always feel that way. So it was different. It was a different Thunderbolts. The one thing I did was, when we first heard that they were making this movie, you know, I think a lot of us, once again, got into our heads and was thinking, hey, this is going to be a direct adaptation of the Thunderbolts comics. Not me. That is why I tell people all the time, you guys got to stop thinking that this is going to be a direct adaptation of the comics. They're not. They're pulling bits and pieces of it, but the writers are doing their own nuances, and I think people are forgetting that. And with this being the Thunderbolts, you knew what was it, because first and foremost, there was no Atlas, there was no Citizen V, there was no Beetle, or after he left Beetle, he became Mach 5 and Mach 4 and all of. There was no Fixer. There was, and of course, my favorite Thunderbolt, there was no Songbird, Melissa Gold. And I'm hoping someday we will see Melissa Gold. But the fact of the matter, there was none of those characters. And so we had to deal with the characters that they have already incorporated into the MCU that was going to make up the Thunderbolts. But we did have Baron Zemo, and I thought he was going to be a part of it, but he wasn't. So that was the only one I was like, well, maybe Baron Zemo will be a part of it, but he's not. So the point of the film was very cool. And this film also introduces a character in Marvel that I don't like. I hate the character. I think I've talked many videos about my not love for this character and why I hate it, why I hate him so much. And we are introduced to this character, played by Lewis Pullman, son of Bill Pullman. Yeah. So, and he looks just like his dad. It is ridiculous how much he looks like his dad. Bill Pullman. Yeah. So, just to see him, and I'm like, every time he was on, I'm like, yeah, he looks just like it. It was the same thing I said about Wyatt Russell, who played U.S. Agent in this. You look at them and you're like, my God, they look like their dads. It's ridiculous. And I guess that's in a case of what it looks like when you are the son of a famous actor, and that also has taken up the acting bug. But outside of that, yes, I did enjoy this film. I enjoyed it very much. So the film touches on a lot of things, and we pick up where a lot of these characters are left off, including Val, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who does a really good job of this classic character. And there's a lot of people that don't really know the Countess, or that's what she was called, Valentina. Pretty much her biggest run was during the Jim Steranko run of Nick Fury, and she was Nick Fury's girl. But here she plays the role very with that dry humor that Miss Dreyfus is known for. She plays it very well, and we see in this film that she's already up for impeachment or something. It's crazy. I'm like, my God, wasn't she on top at one point, and then now she's not on top? We also get to see how Bucky is getting along with his role as a congressman, and when you're watching this, you're like, you could see this is not him. This is not Buck. You know, Buck is a field man. He's not a congressman. He doesn't stand on the sidelines. And you find that. You get to see what is going on with Yelena. You get to see what's going on with Alexei, Red Guardian, and him still kind of feeling the route of living in the past, because we do see him at one point in his home, and he's watching like old footage of his glory days and as Red Guardian. And again, when I'm watching that, and when I was watching that, I'm like, you know, there's a part of me that really would love to see a film or series where we see him as Red Guardian in his heydays, and you know, maybe that would have been where they can introduce the Winter Guard. Again, this is stuff that my geek mind goes into. I'm looking at it like, man, we should have gotten the Winter Guard, you know, see their version of what they would have done with the Winter Guard. You know, and we see where the Ghost is in her life, and we see where U.S. Agent, you know, John is where he is. And we also get a sense of seeing that they all somehow started working for Valentina at some point in time. And I'm like, and as a point of me, I'm also like, oh, when I see the Ghost, I'm like, wait a minute. What happened to Bill? Like, where's Bill? What happened? And since you start working for Julia, not Julia, Countess, the Valentina, with John Walker, we did see that he was working for her, working with her, and it was interesting to see that Yelena, who is really I can honestly say, without a shadow of a doubt, the torch has been passed in terms of the new Black Widow, if that's what you want to call it. Florence Pugh has nailed this character in a way that a lot of people probably didn't think she would. I mean, her interpretation of this character is very, very interesting and very cool in a sense, and I really like that about how she plays, you know, Yelena. In the comics, Yelena is not very trusting. You can't really trust her. She and Natasha have this very curved relationship. But yeah, now, and it's funny now because in the comics now, again, this is what did I talk about before? We're starting to see the White Widow, as she calls herself now, starting to kind of feel more adapt to how Florence is playing her in the movies. Again, see what I'm talking about in terms of the source material now is being more influenced by the films. That being said, it's fine, and she's great at it, and I love her, and you see that she's lost in this movie, and I'm like, whoa, she, and there's parts of it that I related to on such a very high notion of feeling somewhat lost at times, and feeling, you know, here she is still grieving. She's still grieving the loss of her sister, and God knows I know how that. And after 20 plus years of losing someone that I love, it still hurts. So, yeah, I got where they were going, and they really touched on. This was very dark at times. Was this the darkest MCU movie since? I would probably say yes. Even when we get into the whole concept of Bob or Robert, the Sentry, yes, I'm gonna talk about that soon. Yeah, you see it. When we are introduced to the team through means of trying to wipe out everything that Val has been into, it was very interesting to see how they went about doing it. And the biggest question, and I'm sure people would want to know, was, hey Crystal, how did I feel about them just killing off Taskmaster like they did? When I watched that film, when I watched it, and you seen the ghost killer, and I was like, I just kind of went, huh? Whoa! They killed off Taskmaster. After coming out of the movie theaters and I started to think about it, I'm like, okay, there were a lot of people that were really upset with how they interpreted Taskmaster. They didn't go with the male version. They tried to incorporate her into Black Widow's story, and there was a lot of people that felt that was a failure. I was a little shocked and surprised. I didn't think they were going to kill off a character so quickly, but they did. They killed Taskmaster, and I said to myself, I said, okay, they killed her off. So, but then to realize that wasn't in the original script. She was going to be in more of the film. I'm like, so why did they kill her off then? Why did they cut that out of the film? It makes me wonder why they cut that. This is the kind of stuff that why I wait a little bit for these reviews now, because I want what info is going to come out after the film has been showcased for a while. And yeah, I found out that the writer of the script had more. She was in the film more than what they had her in, and he doesn't know why they cut her out of the film. So, and I would wonder how Miss Olga, I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name because I'm probably going to butcher it, but I wonder how she felt about that. Like, wow, I got cut out of the film. Like that must have been weird. But after leaving that film and leaving the film, and I saw that, and I'm like, okay, can they come back to Taskmaster in a different light? Couldn't they make Taskmaster in the MCU more of a legacy character, where they get the original Taskmaster who has the photographic memory and a muscle memory, or can they bring that character back into the better lights that fans would maybe accept better? And I said to myself, and when I was thinking about it, I was like, yes and no. Too late, little too late for that now. Would I be shocked if they did do it? No. But again, right now, I was a little shocked. The comedy about the film really was great. The action scenes which they had involved in were great. I love the motorcycle scene with Bucky. It made Buck look great. And I was talking to a buddy about the film, about if they ever wanted to put Bucky in his own Captain America costume, the one I've been wanting to see, I'll be all for it now, because now he is fully kind of that he could accept the shield now. Now this Bucky could accept that shield. So if we were doing the end of Endgame, where I could see Sam not getting the shield and Bucky getting that shield now, but that's fine. So again, Sebastian Stan really knows this character, and you could see that he really loves playing this character, because he really shines very well in it as well. Wyatt Russell as U.S. Agent, I've never been a big fan of that character. Never been a big fan of John Walker in general. hate him as much as I hate the Sentry, but and there's reasonable evidence of why I don't like the Sentry, and I've talked about my evidence too many times to do. But still, he was fine, and we get to see some dark things about him, and you know, he's still going through and running, and I would say running from what he has done. I mean, we literally saw him. It wasn't as if it happened and nobody saw it. The world saw this man kill a man, and he still has not really accepted that. He still tries to deny it. Well, the man wasn't innocent. Yeah, the man was innocent. He didn't kill Battlestar. It was the other member of Flash who killed him. It wasn't him, but you killed the man, right? And probably another dark scene, and something that, you know, the world has not gotten over. And we see that he, you know, his wife has left him, and he's not tending to his son, and I'm just like, wow. And then with Yelena, again, going back to her, we seen some more exercises that she was doing in the Red Room, and it was some dark shit, and you're like, yo, like, she did that? Like, whoa. And it's not like, for me, I was like, oh, like, whoa, she did that? But anybody who's not familiar with the Red Room and all that, especially if you are a comic fan, and you would expect that. You're not saying to yourself, oh, that never happened. But with someone who is not a novice to this world, and a novice, they see that, like, oh my God, she did that? Yeah, I'm sure there were a lot more darker things. And that's how the Red Room activated, and that's how Widows were. I'm not surprised at that. So we get to see that. And then comes, of course, Bob, or the Sentry in general. Lewis Pullman plays this with such a very, very interesting demeanor to what Bob is and who he is. And we see that a lot of things that, what I notice about Lewis, Mr. Pullman, is his expressions from his face really tells a story. He could tell a story without even speaking. You know, you could see when he is hopeful in his eyes, or hopeful or angry with his eyes, and just the way he looks at you at times. But at the same time, if you're not familiar who this character is, then you wonder, okay, what is his deal? Why is he here? And I think that was something that I really liked of how they played it. They played that character, and that's why I said bravo to Marvel Studios for doing that, because this is a character I do not like. And that's the same thing how I felt about Maria Hill. Kobe Smulders played the character so well that I actually like her version of Maria Hill compared to the bitch of a character that I hate in the comics. I hate Maria Hill. And so seeing her in this was like, hey, I like her. This is the same thing with that. I felt really bad for Bob. And there was points, and I'm just like, you just want to give this dude a hug and try to tell him, like, yo, it's going to be all right. Like, and you feel that for that character. And that was something that I was like, okay, now I'm really, and then it makes me wonder, okay, how are they going to incorporate him into being the Sentry? And I like how they did the Sentry, you know, they basically, like, it was kind of like a new Project Rebirth, but they called it Project Sentry, and I'm like, okay. But you see the manipulation of Val and how she twists everything, and I'm just like, yeah, you're too good, but you're gonna get yours. And that's how I felt about with Val. That just showed you how good of how she has played this role, because I'm looking at Val, and all I kept thinking about is Rick O'Connell from The Mummy, when he's pointing at Benny and is like, you're going to get yours, Benny. You're going to get... And that's how I felt like with Val. I'm like, you're going to get yours. You are going to get yours. And it was very, very interesting to see. And finally, when we do see him in the Sentry costume and him dyeing his hair blonde, because in the film he was brunette, he wasn't a blonde. So, and they even touch her like, did you dye your hair? And he's like, yeah, Val said it would be. And we get to see that yes, they're no match for him. And I think that was also the biggest pet peeve I think I've seen a lot of friends have with this movie. Is like, there are too many super soldiers, not enough firepower, and they're right. And I even said that. I'm looking at this, I'm like, yeah, you got 2 super soldiers, well, technically 3, you know, because they even touch on that, like, you know, what super soldier serum did you take? And it's like, you know, and I'm like, okay. And then, of course, then there's and then you got the Ghost, and you got Yelena, who doesn't have powers, and, you know, it was like, well, okay, this is not much of this is more of a tactical squad than a full force super team. You know what I'm saying? This is more of a task force than a super team. And to see how they were able to deal with the Sentry after he wiped the floor with them. There was even one point where he threw Red Guardian out the window, but pulled them back. I thought he killed them. I was like, I thought another death. I was like, oh, you're gonna do that? And then he pulled them back in. I was like, okay. And then another thing that I saw people saying when I left my theater was like, how was he able to bend? You know, he was able to bend U.S. Agent Shield. Isn't that vibranium? I'm like, no. And I literally had to, no, that's not. It said because Bucky's arm is vibranium. Did he bend that? No, he just ripped it off because it could come off. You didn't see any of that. So U.S. Agent Shield is not made out of vibranium like Captain America's shield. It's a steel alloy that is strong, but not as strong as Steve's. That's why you never see him throwing it. You never see him throwing it. So that's the case. But and then we seen the Void, which I love how they teased the Void. I love how they teased it, and I love their interpretation of the Void. I thought that was beautiful. I love the whole concept of he's just a black silhouette of Lewis Pullman, like, and all you see is a little bit of his eyes, and he's just this and that, and the way he was just turning people into like shadows or so. That was dark. There's a scene, a very scene where I literally screamed out, no! Like, there's a point where, I'll spoil it. There's a scene where, when all the shit starts going down in the city, Red Guardian saves a little girl, and he's like, here, little one, go be safe, and boom, and I'm like, oh, and I was like, no! I really felt that one. So, yes, and I love how they were somewhat able to defeat the Void. It wasn't about brute strength, and it wasn't about power. It was about understanding, but also realizing, especially to Robert, that, hey, you're not alone in this. We all have done things that we're not proud of. We want to help you. And I like that scene where they're inside, I guess, the Void or the Bob's head, and we get to see that, you know, he's dealt with some things, and he comes from a very abusive family and everything like that. And I like that approach, and I liked, because a lot of that reminded me of there's a couple of movies, but one of them that it kind of reminded me of is the episode of Justice League where Wally tapped into the Speed Force for the first time, and he was telling Hawkgirl, he's like, it's so beautiful here, it's a Speed Force, I think I'm gonna stay, I have to go. And you know, she's pulling him and saying, no, Wally, come back, and you see Lantern pull, and then Wonder Woman pull, and Batman and Superman, they're all there pulling him back. I got that notion from that scene, the specific scene that I'm describing, and I was like, okay, that was actually really touching, and I like that. But it's Val who does something that you think, again, what did I just say? You're gonna get yours, Val, and you see, like, she looks. You got Bucky and I believe John. They're walking up to her, about to, and she goes behind a curtain, and then all of a sudden she pulls a camera crew and says, "Ta-da!" Like, almost like, this is what I've been working on. Finally, people. So all and what does she say? I introduce you to the new Avengers, and I'm like, and that's my face. Huh? Wait, what? I'm like, wait, what? But I do like the notion of what Yelena says there. We own you now, because if you try anything, we'll rat you out. We'll know. And I like that. So technically she did get hers somewhat, but didn't. Now, in terms of the title really being the new Avengers, I gotta say I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it, because when you're watching the credits and you're seeing like newspapers, New Avengers, like, they're like, that's not, and I'm even like, yeah, this is supposed to be the Avengers? I'm like, nah, this they officially become the Avengers. I'm like, no, this is not. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, this better lead to something. And what happens? The end credit, we kind of see that something. We see that Sam gets he gets notified of this, and Yelena's talking to Bucky and saying, what did Sam Wilson have to, and this is something that I have always felt I don't like necessarily about the MCU. Like, they're not calling themselves by their superhero names a lot. It's more of their civilian names. I like that when it's amongst the team, but when you're in the field and no, I don't. I've never been a big fan of that. But see, they've gone more on the notion of that these people, the public knows about these heroes, so they don't want to hide it. That's why I'm glad. But there's a point of me that's like, then they're not superheroes in a sense. Like, that's one of the keys of being a superhero. Is like, nobody knows your identity, only your closest allies. So I do like the fact that they touched on that Sam is not a fan of this, and him and Buck Buck even said, I had a big argument, and how to go. It didn't go well. He even copyrighted the name, and I'm like, this better lead to more than this, because whenever Doomsday happens, y'all better get on the same page, or you're gonna get fucked up, by Dr. Doom now. So it does matter. And then, of course, what we see at the end was really interesting. And they're out in space, and they see a ship coming in, and we see on the side of the ship 4. And that was interesting. Very interesting indeed. So where's that gonna go? Overall, this was a really good film. I loved it more for, not the action, I loved it more for the drama and what the movie was supposed to signify in this film. What it signified as well when it comes to characters like this, feeling alone. They're a group of loners. They're not, and that's why I will say this was not a knockoff of the Suicide Squad. You could say, oh, there's bits and pieces, nothing solid, but at the same time, they went a completely different route from the Suicide Squad. But in a sense, the Thunderbolts are kind of the equivalent of the Suicide Squad. The only difference with Thunderbolts, to most degree, is the villains that were on there they actually wanted to redeem themselves. They didn't need bombs in their heads to do it. So That's the difference. But overall, I give Thunderbolts 8.5 out of 10. It nailed everything. It nailed it for me. That's how I go with it. It was good. Did it have the emotional factor? Yes. There were scenes that actually almost got me crying. So, you know, if a Marvel movie could do that for me to make me cry, and trust me, there's a few, that's gonna matter to me. But outside of that, it was great. I said it before. Florence Pugh you can literally see, she is if you want to look at her as the new face of the new generation for the MCU, great, because she's earned it, and she's earned it because she has really taken that flag, that baton from Scarlet. I'm the new Black Widow now. Accept it or not. I don't know if they're gonna call her the Black Widow. I don't know. Will she be called White Widow? I don't know. But she has really landed her role. Sebastian has always, he's just put another notch in his belt buckle. I've always had no problem with Hannah Kamen as the Ghost. Again, gender swapping a character, I'm not that mad at, especially with her, and she does a good job with the character. And you know, Wyatt Russell, he's fine as John Walker. Lewis Pullman as Sentry is interesting, and I love now that, you know, he kind of even mentioned, he's like, look, I can't really be the Sentry without being the Void. So that's going to come into interesting play in the next film when he's in, because yeah, he touches on, he's like, sorry guys, look, I can't be the Sentry without being the Void. And David Harbour as Alexei Sonovix, the Red Guardian, is fine. He just plays it a different way than how it's portrayed in the comics. He plays it like a buffoon at times. He's like a over childish buffoon, you know. But in the comics, Red Guardian is like dead serious many times. He is the Russian equivalent of Captain America. And there was somebody who actually, I seen a ad where someone said, how come Red Guardian doesn't have his shield in the MCU? And I thought about that too. I'm like, you know, that is interesting. Why doesn't he have his shield? His shield is a lot different his shield is more shield-like, not circular. He has more of the classic design shield, and he actually uses it as a weapon, like a stabbing tool and things like that. But he's also had the circular shield as well. But I thought about that too. I'm like, I can't remember if he had it in Black Widow movie or not. But I wouldn't mind seeing them give him a shield at times as well. But everybody played their role well, and I did not mind it. I liked it a lot, and I'm glad to see that a lot of the characters will be returning, and because they, unfortunately, right now they are officially the official Avengers. And are we gonna get an Avengers versus New Avengers, you know, kind of verbal battle? And we don't even know who's Sam's team gonna be. If that's the whole case, will Sam's team be more of familiar characters? Like, will we see Thor on the team, or will we see, you know, Black Panther on the team, and things like that? Will we see where they have their tower and Sam's team will have the original like mansion? That would be excellent. Like we see them with the real Avengers mansion and things like that. Who knows? The whole point is, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But outside of that, I had fun. I enjoyed it. It touched on a lot of things that I'm looking for. What's next in terms of movie reviews that you'll see down the line? Well, I'm definitely going to see Final Destination, and that's mainly because of Tony Todd. Mission Impossible is definitely up there. This is the final Mission Impossible, so I'm definitely going to be checking out that. Next, Karate, the Karate Kid Legacy. That's you'll see that down the line, and of course Superman and Fantastic Four. There's some movie reviews that are coming for you. But if you didn't catch any of my previous movie reviews for 2025, there's only two: Sinners and there's Captain America. Go check them out. I'll leave them in the link in the end. But in the meantime, you guys take care. I'll see you guys next time. As always, I ran my mouth off long enough. It's different. It's a different review. But I'll see you guys next time. Deuces.